Warning, viewer discretion advised. This video contains content that may be disturbing or triggering to some viewers. It includes detailed descriptions of violent crimes, graphic imagery, and discussions of sensitive topics such as murder, assault, and other criminal activities. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you are sensitive to such content, please consider watching another video. Stay safe and take care of your mental health. Insanity Plea, the tragic case of Sydney Powell and the death of Brenda Powell. In this episode, we explore the tragic case of Sydney Powell, a young woman convicted of the stabbing death of her mother, Brenda Powell, in Akron, Ohio. We'll take you through the events leading up to the crime, the shocking incident itself, and the ensuing legal battle, including Sydney's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Through detailed storytelling and expert insights, we aim to shed light on the complexities of this heartbreaking case and its broader implications on mental health in the criminal justice system. In this episode, we explore the tragic case of Sydney Powell, a young woman convicted of the stabbing death of her mother, Brenda Powell, in Akron, Ohio. Sydney Powell, once a promising student with a bright future, found herself at the center of a heartbreaking crime that shocked the community and garnered national attention. Brenda Powell was a devoted mother known for her dedication to her family and her work. Her sudden and violent death left friends and family reeling, searching for answers in a seemingly inexplicable act. We will take you through the intricate details of their lives, exploring Sydney's background, her relationship with her mother, and the pressures she faced leading up to the crime. What could drive a young woman to commit such a heinous act against her own mother? We'll recount the day of the tragic incident, examining the sequence of events and the immediate aftermath. The narrative will cover the police investigation, the evidence collected, and the initial shock waves that rippled through the Akron community. The episode will also delve into the legal proceedings that followed, focusing on Sydney Powell's controversial plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. We'll provide insights into the courtroom drama, including key testimonies, the role of mental health experts, and the arguments presented by both the prosecution and the defense. Listeners will hear from legal experts who will discuss the implications of mental health defenses in criminal trials, and we'll explore how this case has influenced public perception of mental illness within the justice system. Through compelling storytelling and expert analysis, this episode aims to shed light on the complexities of the case, offering a deeper understanding of the factors that led to this family tragedy. Join us as we uncover the full story behind the headlines and reflect on the broader implications of this heartbreaking case. Sydney Powell grew up in Akron, Ohio, a city known for its close-knit communities and industrial heritage. From a young age, Sydney was recognized as a bright and promising student. She excelled academically and participated in various extracurricular activities. Friends and teachers often described her as intelligent, hardworking, and ambitious. Sydney's upbringing was marked by stability and support from her family, particularly her mother, Brenda Powell. Brenda was deeply committed to her daughter's success, often encouraging her to pursue her dreams and providing a nurturing environment for her to thrive. The Powell household was typical of many middle-class American families, with a strong emphasis on education and personal development. The relationship between Sydney and Brenda Powell was multifaceted. On the surface, it appeared to be a loving and supportive bond. Brenda was actively involved in Sydney's life, attending school events and celebrating her achievements. She was not only a mother but also a mentor and confidant, guiding Sydney through the challenges of adolescence and early adulthood. However, beneath the surface, there were underlying tensions and pressures that began to strain their relationship. As Sydney grew older, the expectations placed upon her started to weigh heavily. The pressure to maintain high academic performance, coupled with the normal struggles of teenage life, created a complex dynamic between mother and daughter. Brenda's unwavering support sometimes translated into high expectations, which Sydney found increasingly difficult to meet. This created a cycle of stress and frustration that gradually eroded their relationship. Despite these challenges, there was a deep bond of love and mutual dependence between them, making the events that unfolded even more tragic. Sydney's academic journey was marked by significant achievements, but it was not without its struggles. As she transitioned into higher education, the pressures intensified. Sydney's mental health began to deteriorate, leading to episodes of anxiety and depression. These issues were compounded by the high expectations she felt from her family and herself. During this period, Brenda continued to provide support, but the increasing strain on their relationship became more apparent. The once clear path to success began to blur for Sydney, and her mental health struggles became a significant factor in her life. In the months leading up to the tragic event, the relationship between Sydney and Brenda became more tumultuous. The pressures of academic failure, Mental health issues and familial expectations created a perfect storm. Sydney's mental state was deteriorating rapidly, leading to erratic behavior and escalating tensions at home. Friends and family members noticed changes in Sydney's demeanor, but the full extent of her struggles remained hidden. The combination of personal and academic pressures ultimately culminated in the heartbreaking incident that shocked the community and led to a highly publicized legal battle. This detailed background sets the stage for understanding the complexities of Sydney Powell's life and the tragic events that unfolded, providing listeners with a comprehensive view of the factors that led to the devastating crime. Brenda Powell was a dedicated professional who spent her career working in various roles that showcased her commitment to helping others. She worked as a child life specialist at Akron Children's Hospital, a position that allowed her to combine her professional skills with her deep compassion for children and families in crisis. Brenda was known for her unwavering dedication to her job, often going above and beyond to support her patients and their families during difficult times. Her colleagues admired her for her tireless work ethic, her empathy, and her ability to bring comfort to those in need. Brenda was often described by friends, family, and coworkers as a kind, nurturing, and generous individual. She had a warm personality that made people feel at ease and a natural ability to connect with others. Her empathy and caring nature extended beyond her professional life and into her personal relationships. Brenda was the type of person who would always lend a helping hand, listen without judgment, and offer support whenever it was needed. Her kindness and positive outlook on life left a lasting impression on everyone she met. As a mother, Brenda Powell was deeply devoted to her daughter, Sydney. She was committed to providing Sydney with a stable and loving home environment, ensuring that she had every opportunity to succeed. Brenda's approach to motherhood was marked by a balance of support and encouragement, pushing Sydney to achieve her best while also being her biggest cheerleader. She attended school events, celebrated Sydney's achievements, and was always there to offer guidance and advice. Brenda's relationship with Sydney was characterized by a strong bond built on mutual love and respect. However, as Sydney grew older and faced increasing pressures, Brenda's role became more challenging. She navigated the difficulties of supporting a daughter struggling with mental health issues and academic pressures, all while maintaining her own demanding career. Despite these challenges, Brenda remained steadfast in her dedication to her daughter, often putting Sydney's needs above her own. Brenda Powell's life was a testament to her strength, compassion, and unwavering commitment to those she loved and served. Her tragic death left a void in the lives of many, but her legacy of kindness and dedication continues to be remembered by all who knew her. This background provides a deeper understanding of Brenda's character and the profound impact she had on those around her, setting the stage for the heartbreaking events that unfolded in the case of Sydney Powell. The Powell family was generally perceived as a close-knit unit, marked by a strong bond between mother and daughter. Brenda Powell, a dedicated mother and professional, worked tirelessly to provide a nurturing environment for Sydney. Their relationship was characterized by mutual love and respect, with Brenda playing an active role in Sydney's life, from her academic endeavors to her personal development. They often spent quality time together, engaging in shared activities and family traditions that reinforced their bond. Despite the apparent harmony, there were underlying complexities in their relationship. Brenda's high expectations for Sydney's academic and personal achievements created a dynamic where success was highly valued. This stemmed from Brenda's own commitment to excellence in her career and life. She believed in pushing Sydney to reach her full potential, which sometimes translated into considerable pressure for Sydney. As Sydney progressed through her teenage years into young adulthood, the pressures of maintaining high academic performance and the transition to higher education began to take a toll. Sydney faced significant challenges in meeting the expectations placed upon her, leading to increasing stress and anxiety. The pressures culminated in struggles with mental health, including episodes of depression and anxiety, which further complicated the family dynamic. The tensions between Sydney's academic aspirations and her mental health struggles became a source of conflict. Brenda, while supportive, often found it difficult to balance her desire to see Sydney succeed with the need to address her daughter's mental well-being. This conflict sometimes led to misunderstandings and frustrations on both sides. In the months leading up to the tragic incident, these issues escalated. Sydney's deteriorating mental state, coupled with academic failures, intensified the strain within the household. The previously close relationship between mother and daughter became fraught with arguments and emotional volatility. Friends and family members observed changes in their interactions, noting an increase in tension and distress. The combination of high expectations, academic pressures, and unresolved mental health issues created a volatile environment. Despite Brenda's efforts to support her daughter, the mounting pressures proved overwhelming. The tragic events that unfolded were the result of these cumulative stresses and the complex interplay of love, expectation, and mental health struggles within the Powell family. This exploration of family dynamics and known issues provides a deeper understanding of the context in which the tragic events occurred, highlighting the challenges faced by both Brenda and Sydney Powell. In the months leading up to the tragic event, Sydney Powell's life was a complex web of increasing pressures and deteriorating mental health. Sydney, once a bright and promising student with a seemingly assured future, began to experience significant academic challenges. These challenges were compounded by the intense expectations placed upon her, both self-imposed and from her mother, Brenda Powell. The stress of maintaining her academic performance, while grappling with the normal trials of young adulthood, created a high-pressure environment. Brenda Powell, a dedicated mother and professional, had always emphasized the importance of academic success and personal achievement. She believed in pushing Sydney to reach her full potential, often setting high standards for her daughter. While this approach stemmed from a place of love and a desire to see Sydney succeed, it also contributed to an environment where failure was not easily accepted. Brenda's expectations, combined with her own demanding career, sometimes left little room for addressing Sydney's growing mental health needs. Sydney's struggles were not merely academic. She began to exhibit signs of severe anxiety and depression, conditions that were exacerbated by the relentless pressure to perform. Despite these signs, Sydney's mental health issues were either inadequately addressed or largely overlooked. The stigma surrounding mental health and the fear of failure may have prevented her from seeking the help she desperately needed. As Sydney's academic performance declined, so did her self-esteem. She started to isolate herself from friends and family, withdrawing into a world of increasing stress and emotional turmoil. Her behavior became more erratic and unpredictable, with frequent mood swings and outbursts of anger. The once confident and ambitious young woman was now struggling to maintain a sense of normalcy in her daily life. The Powell family, on the surface, appeared to be a typical middle-class family living in Akron, Ohio. Brenda Powell was the cornerstone of the household, balancing her demanding career with her responsibilities as a mother. Sydney Powell, her daughter, was the focus of Brenda's aspirations and expectations. The family dynamic was heavily influenced by Brenda's strong-willed personality and her determination to see Sydney succeed. Brenda's commitment to Sydney's success was unwavering. She was involved in every aspect of Sydney's life, from her school activities to her social engagements. Brenda's support extended beyond mere encouragement. She actively participated in school events, helped with homework, and constantly sought opportunities to advance Sydney's academic and personal development. This involvement created a bond that was both close and intense, with Brenda deeply invested in Sydney's future. However, this close relationship also had its drawbacks. The high expectations Brenda placed on Sydney created an environment where failure was not easily tolerated. Brenda's high standards were a reflection of her own professional achievements and her desire to see Sydney reach her full potential. This resulted in a family dynamic where success was paramount, and any deviation from this path was met with concern and sometimes frustration. As Sydney transitioned from adolescence into young adulthood, the pressures she faced began to mount. Her academic journey, once a source of pride and achievement, became increasingly challenging. The pressures of maintaining high grades, coupled with the competitive nature of higher education, took a toll on Sydney's mental health. The high expectations set by Brenda, while intended to motivate, began to feel like an insurmountable burden. Sydney's struggles were not just academic, they were deeply personal. She began to experience severe anxiety and bouts of depression, which were exacerbated by the constant pressure to perform. Despite these signs, there was a reluctance to fully acknowledge or address these mental health issues, both by Sydney and those around her. The stigma associated with mental health and the fear of appearing weak or incapable prevented Sydney from seeking the help she needed. The tension between Sydney and Brenda escalated as these issues became more pronounced. Brenda, while supportive, often found it difficult to understand the depth of Sydney's struggles. Her approach, rooted in her belief in the importance of hard work and perseverance, sometimes came across as dismissive of Sydney's mental health challenges. This disconnect led to frequent arguments and emotional outbursts, with both mother and daughter feeling misunderstood and frustrated. The once nurturing environment of the Powell household became increasingly fraught with conflict. Friends and family who were close to the Powells began to notice the changes. The relationship that was once characterized by mutual support and affection was now overshadowed by frequent clashes and unresolved tensions. Sydney's erratic behavior and Brenda's increasing concern created a volatile atmosphere that further strained their relationship. In the months leading up to the tragic event, the tensions between Sydney and Brenda reached a critical point. Sydney's academic performance continued to decline, adding to her feelings of inadequacy and despair. Brenda's attempts to intervene, though well-intentioned, often led to more friction. The arguments became more intense, with both sides struggling to find common ground. Sydney's mental health deteriorated further, with episodes of severe anxiety and depression becoming more frequent. She felt trapped in a cycle of expectation and failure, unable to see a way out. Brenda, on the other hand, was grappling with her own fears and frustrations, trying to help her daughter while also dealing with the demands of her own life and career. The combination of these factors created a perfect storm of emotional and psychological strain. The once close-knit family was now divided by unresolved issues and escalating tensions. The lack of effective communication and the inability to address Sydney's mental health needs contributed to a growing sense of hopelessness and despair. This detailed exploration of the family dynamics and known issues within the Powell household provides a deeper understanding of the context in which the tragic events unfolded. It highlights the complex interplay of love, expectation, and mental health struggles that ultimately led to a heartbreaking outcome. By examining these factors, we gain insight into the pressures faced by both Sydney and Brenda Powell, offering a more nuanced view of the tragedy. It was March 3, 2020, a seemingly ordinary day in the Powell household. Brenda Powell, a dedicated child life specialist at Akron Children's Hospital, was home with her daughter, Sydney, who had been struggling with mounting pressures from her academic life. Sydney was a young woman with a once promising future, but recently, she had been facing severe academic setbacks and mental health challenges that were pushing her to the brink. On this fateful day, the atmosphere in the Powell home was tense. An argument erupted between Sydney and Brenda, one of many in recent weeks. The topic was Sydney's academic performance and future, a subject that had become a constant source of friction between mother and daughter. Brenda, known for her high expectations and strong support for Sydney, was trying to address her daughter's struggles. However, the conversation quickly escalated into a heated exchange. Let's take a closer look at the events as they unfolded on that tragic day. Brenda had taken the day off to spend time with Sydney, hoping to have a heart-to-heart conversation about her academic struggles. Brenda knew that Sydney was under immense stress and wanted to provide her with support and guidance. They began the day with a quiet breakfast together, but the tension was palpable. Sydney was visibly anxious, her mind racing with thoughts of her recent academic failures and the overwhelming pressure to succeed. Brenda tried to reassure her, but Sydney's frustration boiled over. As the morning progressed, the conversation turned to Sydney's upcoming exams and her recent grades. Brenda, concerned about Sydney's future, suggested seeking additional help and exploring alternative academic paths. This suggestion, though well-meaning, struck a nerve with Sydney, who felt like she was being criticized for her shortcomings. The argument began to escalate. Sydney, feeling cornered and overwhelmed, responded defensively. Brenda, equally frustrated, raised her voice, emphasizing the importance of education and the opportunities it could provide. The exchange became more heated, with both mother and daughter speaking over each other, their words filled with anger and hurt. In the midst of their argument, the phone rang. It was the university, calling to discuss Sydney's academic performance. Brenda answered the call, her voice still tinged with frustration from the ongoing argument. The university representative informed Brenda that Sydney was at risk of being placed on academic probation due to her declining grades. Brenda's face grew stern as she listened to the representative, her worry and disappointment deepening. She thanked the caller and hung up, turning to Sydney with a mix of concern and exasperation. Brenda relayed the news to Sydney, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. Sydney, already on edge, felt her world crumbling around her. As emotions ran high, Sydney's mental state deteriorated further. The pressure, the expectations, and the feeling of being trapped became too much for her to bear. In a moment of uncontrollable rage and despair, Sydney grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter. The next moments were filled with horror as she attacked her mother. Brenda, unprepared for the violent outburst, was unable to defend herself. The attack was brutal and swift, leaving Brenda with fatal injuries. The once loving home of the Powells had become a scene of unimaginable tragedy. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Sydney, now in a state of shock and confusion, realized the gravity of her actions. She was found by the police shortly after the attack, disoriented and unresponsive. The officers were called to the scene by a concerned neighbor who had heard the commotion. When the police arrived, they discovered Brenda Powell gravely injured. Despite their efforts and those of emergency medical responders, Brenda succumbed to her injuries at the scene. The once nurturing environment of the Powell household was now marked by blood and sorrow. As emotions ran high, Sydney's mental state deteriorated further. The pressure, the expectations, and the feeling of being trapped became too much for her to bear. In a moment of uncontrollable rage and despair, Sydney grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter. The next moments were filled with horror as she attacked her mother. Brenda, unprepared for the violent outburst, was unable to defend herself. The attack was brutal and swift, leaving Brenda with fatal injuries. The once loving home of the Powells had become a scene of unimaginable tragedy. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Sydney, now in a state of shock and confusion, realized the gravity of her actions. She was found by the police shortly after the attack, disoriented and unresponsive. The officers were called to the scene by a concerned neighbor who had heard the commotion. When the police arrived, they discovered Brenda Powell gravely injured. Despite their efforts and those of emergency medical responders, Brenda succumbed to her injuries at the scene. The once nurturing environment of the Powell household was now marked by blood and sorrow. The trial of Sydney Powell was a highly anticipated event, drawing significant media attention and public interest. The courtroom was packed with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers, all eager to witness the unfolding drama. The case had captivated the nation, not just for the brutality of the crime, but also for the complex psychological and legal issues it raised. Sydney Powell, charged with the murder of her mother, entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. This defense would place her mental state at the time of the crime under intense scrutiny, bringing to light the profound mental health struggles she had been facing. The prosecution painted a picture of a brutal and senseless murder, emphasizing the violent nature of the attack and the tragic loss of Brenda Powell. They argued that Sydney's actions were deliberate and premeditated, driven by a deep-seated anger and resentment towards her mother. Prosecutor: Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a young woman who, in a fit of uncontrollable rage, took the life of her own mother. The evidence will show that this was not an act of self-defense or a momentary lapse, but a calculated and violent attack. The defense, on the other hand, presented a different narrative. They called upon mental health experts who testified to Sydney's severe depression, anxiety, and the overwhelming pressures that had driven her to a breaking point. The defense argued that Sydney was not in control of her actions and that her mental illness had clouded her judgment, leading to the tragic outcome. Defense attorney: Sydney Powell is not a cold-blooded killer. She is a young woman who has been battling severe mental illness, a fact that cannot be ignored. On the day of the incident, Sydney's mental state was such that she was unable to comprehend the nature and consequences of her actions. One of the key moments in the trial was the testimony of Dr. Elaine Mitchell, a renowned psychiatrist who had evaluated Sydney. Dr. Mitchell provided a detailed account of Sydney's mental health history, including her diagnosis of major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. She described how these conditions, exacerbated by academic pressures and familial expectations, culminated in a psychotic break. Dr. Mitchell: Sydney Powell was suffering from severe mental illness at the time of the incident. Her actions were not those of a rational individual, but rather of someone in the grips of a profound psychological crisis. She lacked the capacity to control her behavior or understand the full impact of her actions. The prosecution, however, challenged this testimony, bringing their own experts to dispute the severity of Sydney's mental illness and to suggest that she was capable of making rational decisions. The battle of expert witnesses added a layer of complexity to the trial, as both sides presented compelling arguments about Sydney's state of mind. Throughout the trial, the jury was presented with graphic evidence of the crime, including photographs of the crime scene and forensic analysis. The emotional toll on the jurors was palpable, as they grappled with the harrowing details of Brenda Powell's death and the conflicting portraits of Sydney. After several weeks of testimony, arguments, and emotional appeals, the case was finally handed over to the jury. They deliberated for days, weighing the evidence and the complex issues surrounding Sydney's mental health and culpability. In the end, the jury reached a verdict that reflected the complexities of the case. Sydney Powell was found guilty of manslaughter, acknowledging her responsibility for her mother's death while also recognizing the profound impact of her mental illness. The judge sentenced Sydney to a term in a mental health facility, where she would receive the treatment she needed while serving her sentence. The outcome of the trial brought some closure to the community, but the emotional scars and unanswered questions remained. The trial of Sydney Powell highlighted the intricate interplay between mental health and the criminal justice system. It underscored the importance of understanding and addressing mental illness, not just in the context of criminal behavior, but as a critical public health issue. The aftermath of the trial of Sydney Powell left a lasting impact on everyone involved in the wider community of Akron, Ohio. With the trial concluded and Sydney sentenced to a mental health facility, The focus shifted to the long-term consequences of the case on mental health awareness, the criminal justice system, and the individuals directly affected by the tragedy. The community of Akron was left in a state of shock and mourning. Brenda Powell had been a beloved figure, known for her work at Akron Children's Hospital and her dedication to helping children and families in crisis. Her sudden and violent death left a void that was deeply felt by her colleagues, friends, and neighbors. Memorial services were held in her honor, with many paying tribute to her compassionate nature and tireless work ethic. For the remaining members of the Powell family, the aftermath of the trial was a period of intense grief and reflection. The loss of Brenda and the incarceration of Sydney shattered the family structure. They were left to navigate the complexities of grief, anger, and the profound sense of loss. Counseling and support services played a crucial role in helping them cope with the emotional aftermath. The case of Sydney Powell brought significant attention to the importance of mental health awareness and the need for better mental health services. The trial had highlighted the severe mental health struggles that Sydney faced, and the lack of adequate support she received. Advocacy groups and mental health professionals used the case as a platform to call for improved mental health resources, early intervention, and the reduction of stigma surrounding mental health issues. The trial also sparked discussions about the criminal justice system's handling of cases involving mental illness. Legal experts and policymakers debated the efficacy of the insanity plea and the need for reforms to ensure that individuals with severe mental health issues receive appropriate treatment rather than solely punitive measures. Some proposed changes included better training for law enforcement in handling mental health crises and the development of specialized courts for mental health cases. Sydney Powell's time in the mental health facility was focused on rehabilitation and treatment. Under the care of mental health professionals, she began a rigorous program of therapy and medication management aimed at addressing her underlying mental health conditions. Her progress was closely monitored, with regular assessments to evaluate her mental state and readiness for eventual reintegration into society. The case had broader implications for how society views and handles mental health crises. It underscored the need for a more compassionate and comprehensive approach to mental health, one that integrates support systems across communities, schools, and workplaces. The tragedy also served as a wake-up call for many families to take mental health issues seriously and seek help when needed. While the pain of the events will never fully dissipate, the community of Akron and those affected by the case have started the slow process of healing and rebuilding. Brenda Powell's legacy of kindness and dedication lives on through various charitable initiatives and programs established in her memory. Sydney's case continues to be a point of reference in discussions about mental health and criminal justice reform, reminding us of the profound impact these issues can have on individuals and society as a whole. As we continue to explore the lasting effects of this tragic case, we hope to shed light on the crucial importance of mental health awareness and the ongoing efforts to create a more supportive and understanding world for those struggling with mental health issues. The case of Sydney Powell and the tragic death of her mother, Brenda Powell, is a heart-wrenching story that underscores the profound complexities of mental health in the criminal justice system. As we reflect on the events that transpired, it becomes clear that this case is not just about a single tragic event, but rather about the broader issues that surround it. Brenda Powell's life was marked by compassion, dedication, and a profound love for her family and her work. Her untimely and violent death was a devastating loss to all who knew her. The community of Akron, Ohio, mourns her passing and remembers her legacy as a beacon of kindness and support. Sydney Powell's journey through the criminal justice system highlights the urgent need for a more nuanced and compassionate approach to mental health. Her struggles with severe anxiety and depression were critical factors that led to the tragic outcome. The trial and subsequent discussions about her mental state brought much-needed attention to the importance of mental health awareness, early intervention, and adequate support systems. The case also serves as a reminder of the pressures and expectations placed on young people today. Sydney's story is a poignant example of how unaddressed mental health issues can escalate into crises with devastating consequences. It underscores the necessity for families, educators, and communities to be vigilant and proactive in recognizing and addressing mental health concerns. In the aftermath of the trial, there has been a significant push for reforms in how the criminal justice system handles cases involving mental illness. Advocates are calling for better training for law enforcement, more resources for mental health care, and the creation of specialized courts to deal with such cases. These changes aim to ensure that individuals like Sydney receive the treatment they need rather than being solely subjected to punitive measures. As we conclude this episode, we remember the lives impacted by this tragedy and the lessons learned from it. The story of Sydney and Brenda Powell is a powerful call to action for greater awareness and understanding of mental health issues. It is a reminder that behind every headline is a complex human story, often fraught with unseen struggles and pain. Thank you for joining us in exploring this difficult but important case. We hope that by shedding light on these issues, we can contribute to a broader conversation about mental health and justice, and ultimately, to a more compassionate and supportive society. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we continue to delve into the stories that shape our world and challenge us to think more deeply about the human condition. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the tragic case of Sydney Powell and the death of her mother, Brenda Powell. This story has been a poignant reminder of the complexities of mental health and the far-reaching impacts it can have on individuals, families, and communities. Through the heartbreaking details of this case, we've explored the profound struggles that Sydney faced and the immense pressures that contributed to this tragic outcome. We've also honored the legacy of Brenda Powell, a woman whose dedication and compassion left an indelible mark on those who knew her. As we reflect on the lessons learned from this case, it is clear that mental health awareness and support are more crucial than ever. This story underscores the need for early intervention, comprehensive mental health care, and a compassionate approach within the criminal justice system. We hope that this episode has not only informed but also inspired you to think more deeply about the importance of mental health and the ways we can support those in need. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please seek help. There are resources available, and no one should have to face these challenges alone. Please join us in our next episode as we continue to explore the stories that shape our understanding of the world around us. Your support and engagement are invaluable to us, and we encourage you to share this podcast with others who might benefit from these discussions. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review and subscribing to our podcast. Your feedback helps us to continue bringing you important and impactful stories. Thank you once again for listening. Until next time, take care, and remember to be kind to one another.